In today's demonstration, I'm going to show you how to make the world's most simplest wine in the world. It takes nothing really. You don't have to go to a fancy store. You don't have to buy special things. You can just go to your grocery store and get these simple kitchen items. For a container, we have an empty Hawaiian Punch jug. How much did that cost? Nothing. It's free. We recycled it. Here we have some ordinary sugar. We don't need the whole thing, but the whole thing cost a couple of dollars, and we're probably going to use 50 cents worth of sugar. Here we have some grape juice concentrate. This cost me about $2, $2.50. If you're careful, you can find it for $1.50. Here to mix things up a bit, we're going to add a little extra flavor to it, and we're going to add some apple raspberry juice to it. Now, this cost me $1.70 at the store last night. We have some bread yeast, common everyday bread yeast. This cost me $1.50, and you have 3 little packets, so roughly 50 cents for 1 packet of yeast. So this is all we need except some water, and as far as I know, water's not that expensive. So here we go. We have 50 cents there. We have at the most $2 there, $1.70 there, and 50 cents worth of sugar. To start things off, everything that I'm going to use has been washed. Sterilized? No, you don't need to sterilize it. Just make sure it's washed properly. Wash your hands, of course. To put things in there, we have the top of a pop bottle that has been cut off. Free! Okay, it wasn't free. It cost me 10 cents because I can no longer take this back to the store and collect my 10 cents for it. Perfect funnel. We take our yeast and dump it in. We take some sugar. And you don't really need sugar, but if you want your wine to have an extra kick to it, a little extra oomph, you can add as much sugar as you want. The more sugar you add, the stronger it'll get, and the yeast will only the yeast will only convert so much of the sugar, so if you add too much, your wine will just start getting sweeter. You can add, if your wine is too dry, you could add some sugar later after the yeast has died off. So we don't even need an exact measurement here. We're just going to throw in a little more. Looks good to me. It might have been about a half a cup to a cup. Now then, we'll take our apple raspberry juice here. And we'll dump it in. We will take our grape juice. Dump that in. We'll make sure we get everything out of there. I got some water here. these. And now we will mix everything up thoroughly. Alright, that is well mixed, and it'll dissolve. The yeast and the sugar will dissolve more after we add our final ingredient, water. This is warm water straight out of the tap. If you want, you can get distilled water, spring water, whatever you want. And we're using warm water because it'll help activate the yeast. We'll get a little more here. Okay, a little more water. Now, the important thing here is do not fill it to the top. We can add just a little more. Do not fill it to the top. Leave about a good 3 inches from the top, because you need to give the jug you need to give the wine some space, because it will produce CO2, and if it starts to build pressure and you suddenly release that pressure, you'll have wine all over the place. Now, very important, do not put the cap on tight. Leave it with just a crack so it can breathe. That way the CO2 building up can come out. And that's all. That's all we have to do to make a gallon of Hawaiian Punch recycled jug wine. Just set this someplace warm if you have it. Do not put it in a place that is extremely hot. You could cook the yeast and kill it. It just has to stay in a warm spot. If you don't have a warm spot, just stick it someplace out of the way, and make sure that your cap is just a little loose and it can breathe. After about a week to 2 weeks, after about a week, you can start to drink it if you want. It won't be fully fermented, but if you let it sit at least 2 weeks, it should be about fully fermented. You can drink it at this point. However, your wine will be a bit cloudy, and you'll be drinking the yeast along with it. There's nothing wrong with that. Yeast is actually pretty good for you. If you want your wine to be more clear, you just let it sit. The longer it sits, after the yeast has finished making the alcohol and has died off, the yeast needs a chance to settle to the bottom. The longer you let it set, the more the yeast will settle to the bottom, and then all you have to do is transfer the wine to another container, and be careful not to stir up the sediment on the bottom. And that's it. Now, because my house is heated with a kerosene heater, and sometimes it's hot and sometimes it's cold in here, but depending on whether I turn it on or off, we're going to make sure that this gets a good start. What I've done here is I've squeezed the jug until the level of the juice rose to the very top, so that there is absolutely no air in here, and I've sealed the cap off. So now there is zero air in there, and to make sure that the yeast gets activated properly, we are giving it a warm water bath so that it stays warm for a while. Very low heat. Let's see if I can turn this down just a little more. There we go. Very low heat. Just a warm water bath to make sure this stays warm. And as you can see, we have a little bit of CO2 building up on the ridges there. As you can see, we're getting a pretty good reaction. Now here we go. We have our wine. As you see, it's built up pressure. Now this yeast is about as activated as it's going to get. So now we'll release the cap just a little bit. And that's why you need a big gap in your bottle. Now we'll just kind of mix it up one more time. Release the pressure again, and we will store it in a nice safe spot. And now it's got friends. We have, in addition to the grape, apple, raspberry wine, we have some regular grape wine, and we have some apple wine. Now the only thing I did different with these two is that I just bought bottles of regular juice, poured in a little extra sugar, and dumped in the yeast and warmed them up to activate the yeast, and that's all I did. So we're going to add some more sugar to our mixes, and because I don't feel like making another funnel, we're going to use a little thing from those airborne vitamins. We'll just use an empty container here and scoop some out. And add it to here. Look at that, we're getting some more reaction. Our yeast is not finished. Not by a long shot. So we'll keep adding the sugar just as long as the yeast will let us. We'll add some to this one. Ooh, that one. That's why you need room in the top of your container. To make sure that we have active yeast in there, we've taken a little more of the quick rise yeast that I have left over from making these two, and we're just going to add a little more to each one. And stir it up. And we'll warm them back up, and we will stick them back in their cubby hole. And back into the warm water bath they go. We'll just let them sit here for about a couple to 5 minutes or so, just till they get warm again, and let that new yeast get activated.